Hello, this is Dale Matthews with Inside News. Mike Jones has given me the high sign, which is different than the kind of high sign some people would give me. It means we're on the air. Hello, Mike.
Mm-hmm. And that little twinkle, I don't know what that means, but
That little twinkle means that once again, Windows 10 says, I'm not operating correctly. Whatever.
well,
Sorry.
what we'll have to do, because we can get rid of that, is just kill your system sounds, and then you'll still get all your media playing and everything. We just won't hear little beeps and chirps from your computer. That's all.
Might hear them from us, however. Okay, so
Yes, that's true.
I thought that what we do is start off with our KJO countdown to honesty. And once again, KJO has decided to block the news. They will not report it. They refuse to report the news that there was a meeting that happened of local public safety coordinating council, at which three representatives said, no, this thing of having the state come down and take over, this is not a good idea. It was on the front page of the Courier. It's been on television. We've been talking about it for days. And those news aces over at KJO have imposed a news blackout on that story.
You know what? My read on it is completely different than that. I just don't think they think it's that big a news, and they're
then they're wrong. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not hard.
The front page.
You always say, Dale. You always say conspiracy or lunkheads. Go with lunkheads.
Okay. All right. Now, in a related story, here's the front page of the Courier. And they finally got around to talking about something we told you 2 weeks ago, which is this effort with 22 members of Congress who are moving ahead with promoting the idea of secure rural schools for 1/4 of the country. I don't even think that's in this story, but I thought it was interesting, and the reason I blew it up real big is here's Sean Hall. I'm not seeing a lot of difference between him and the guy that preceded him, and his first sentence, the very top of it, sounds a bit like an editorial. What does that say there, Mike?
Call it insecure rural schools.
Hey, Sean Hall, this is supposed to be a regular news story on the front page, not your personal opinion.
Yeah, but listen, you know what? We know that Sean Hall is a biased reporter because when he calls commissioner candidates up to interview them about who they are so that he can write a little blurb to go in the newspaper, he will spend an inordinate amount of time arguing with you about your positions instead of just asking you what they are so that he can then write them down.
Well, I finally said to the guy, look, who's being interviewed here? Really? I mean, this is my position. Here's what Maury said. Whatever it's called, the federal payments program that has been propping up Josephine County government in diminishing amounts for 15 years is before Congress again, sort of. Hey, Sean, you really want to be an editorial writer? There's a position there for you, I think. But this is biased reporting on the front page that is under the guise, as the Oregon Ethics Commission said about the commissioners, it's under the guise of news reporting. That's not news.
Yeah. The thing is that I think probably most of the public is not really all that well versed on how one of these suggestions or recommendations or pleading to the appropriation committee that some particular appropriation make it into law in the upcoming session of Congress. I don't think we've really gone into great detail. So, it's not like this guy knows more than anyone else, or maybe he could have laid that out in the article. Well, they're only doing this, and if you're really serious about it, you're supposed to do this. Well, no, this was a recommendation, a pleading of the Appropriations Committee to consider funding SRS for 2016 and beyond. And, that seems as legitimate as any other beginning of a funding thing for I'm missing the proper words to describe this here, but to take tax money and send it in a particular direction.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you, which is very unusual for us, and that I think it took 2 weeks for this character to write this story because he was trying to figure out how to write it in the most negative possible way. Call it insecure rural schools.
Listen,
it's bipartisan.
Well, no, there isn't any question that what direction he's coming at this from. That's not the question. It's just that he's making a presumption about something that nobody here has really talked about or knows really a whole lot about, and that is the progress of right. One of these little suggestions between it being implanted into something and ultimately becoming law. We don't know a whole lot about that, so we don't know if this is any different than any other time that SRS has been funded.
But I'll tell you something we do know.
He doesn't know it either, or he would have said it.
Not included in the article is the fact that the commissioners have all been telling us there's no activity. That's the story. No activity, no activity, no activity. You can give up hope. And then this guy writes a hopeless beginning to the story.
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell anybody that the commissioners have been lying to us. What? This is the Courier we're talking about.
It has to be hopeless so that we can all cower in fear, because now this really, really, really is going to be the Wild West. Then it's really, oh my God, father rapers, mother stabbers. There's going to be all kinds of stuff going on.
It's a war zone, right?
Yeah.
All right. So now, for those of you who are thinking, well, I've seen several stories on Inside News, that's the name of the show, about the Grants Pass City Council and the goofy things they've done. And aside from the rather alarming idea that they're going to embark on the biggest project in Grants Pass City history, up to $50 million or beyond, for a water plant, and we've told you that whole story, you might think, well, listen, boys will be boys, and maybe something could be worked out. After tonight's show, you're no longer going to think that. Mm-hmm. This is big and bad, and it's a pre-election rush to increase debt, to put us under debt for 25 to 30 years. And they want to be sure that they get it done no later than October. And what happens in November?
Yeah, I know. Okay, but are you presuming that somehow they want to do this before the election because they don't know who's coming in and they may not be able to accomplish that early next year?
Well, they've certainly said a lot of those kinds of things. They did not say that in this meeting, but what do you think? What do all of you think? Okay, so we're going to present to you the videotape evidence, and if you come up with a different conclusion, you can send us an email, because Mike at some point here will put up an email address, and you can send something to us. You can say, hey, I've come up with a completely different conclusion than you have. That's okay. Okay, because after all, you can be wrong.
Yeah.
We don't. Okay, so this first person is going to talk. Her name is Elaine Howard. She's with Elaine Howard Consulting. Pretty creative title. And she's been working with Echo Northwest, or as Joe puts it, Econ-Northwest. No, that's not the way they say it, but whatever. Anyway, she's been working with Echo Northwest, and she's going to lay out the next step on urban renewal that's absolutely essential if we're all going to live in this world. Urban renewal for Grants Pass. Here we go.
When we established the boundary, it took us a couple of meetings with the task force to establish the boundary because we wanted to make sure we included all those properties where there were potential needs to be addressed. Urban renewal is guided by having to find blight within an urban renewal area.
Blight.
And so we basically looked at properties that were either underserved by utilities, they were underdeveloped, there were areas where new development could enhance the area, or areas where there were projects that the city felt needed to be done, infrastructure projects to help improve the areas. You can see this is an overall picture of the potential urban renewal area shown in the yellow. It's fairly large. It's 1,339 acres. It has about $505 million of total assessed value.
Wow. That's a pretty big project, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, we don't really know what any of this means yet, because of course, inside a lot of those neighborhoods are, private homes and stuff. So I doubt that they're proposing spending any great deal of money. They're not going to be handing out vouchers for people so that they can, spruce their homes up. I'm sure that they're going to build little sports parks and a bunch of other little things, because we're rich. We're flush with money here.
As Dennis Roller put it, we've got so much money, it's embarrassing. That's what he said. We showed you the tape of that. And what SDCs, which sounds like it's something you don't want to catch, system development charges in the city are largely about things like, well, you need to have these concrete places where flowers are put there, and you need to sneak, the lot around your fast food place in such a way so that there's all kinds of trees and flowers, and maybe there'll be hanging baskets. And then, I like those things too. At this time, this is one of their, and they want twinkly little lights throughout the entire year on the trees, because, when people come to Grants Pass, the first thing they say is, hey, where's the twinkly little lights? And that's not going to work. So let's take a look at what areas that they consider to be blighted areas. What areas, how big is this area? Here we go.
If you start from the north end of the city, these are properties up at the I-5 entrance to the city to the north. It goes up along Northwest Vine, so some of those industrial properties along that area. It jumps over the freeway just a little bit to take in the old state police force property, and then goes down 6th and 7th Avenues. So this is a key area to your city because it's the entrance to your city. It's what people first see when they come into Grants Pass. It's an area that you want to look especially good. And right now, if you're driving on the freeway and you look at that area, it doesn't look especially good. So it's certainly an area that could use a lot of improvement.
I'm not going to disagree with her on that. Well, I don't know if I call it blighted, but when you first come into town from the north, it is true. That's not, it's like going into Eureka. Wow, that's awful. And so it would be nice from the north approach to have it look a little nicer. It could be nice. Yeah, I think it's a good point.
Oh, okay. All right. And I don't know that it's the greatest point in the world, but what are you going to do about that? Because, mostly what you see, you come off of the ramp off of I-5 and you drop down, you come to this intersection. Most of what is in that area is all privately held stuff. So what are you going to do? Are you going to mandate some sort of a thing? Are you going to spruce up their properties for them? What are you going to do?
You're going to maybe put a convention center there. You're going to put lights
really?
on.
Where?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
What, are you going to kick out some hotels? Rip out a gas station?
Yeah, when you go into Ashland, as I've said on the show before, they have these cute little kite stores and candle stores. Here, we've got cute little tire stores. And so we're going to need to kind of shift things around to put on our best possible look. And we're going to spend a ton of money doing that because, hey, If we don't have the money, which we don't, then we're going to borrow the money. We're going to borrow the money.
Listen, if the people of the city of Grants Pass want that and will vote for it, then I say whatever, But
you'll hear by the end of this show whether you're even going to get a chance to vote on it. What has been their penchant recently? It didn't start with this, but one of the places where they were burned so badly, the city was when the people said, we don't like this idea of being the only city in all of Oregon that has a sales tax. We won't need rebranding. The people around here and other places, other states are going to rebrand us. We'll be the sales tax city. Might as well just put a big dollar sign or maybe a marijuana leaf on your signs, all your signs, saying, hey, this is what we're all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they didn't like that, and they even said, you saw it on the show, well, the people had nothing to say that made any sense. Really? Yeah, what a mystery that these people said no. Well, I thought we'd lose. I didn't think we'd lose that big. Really? Well, here's another loser plan, but I doubt they don't seem to be listening. Look, we've been telling you about this thing about this rebranding. You go, oh man, rebranding, who cares? Well, it's an indication of the fact that you've told them crystal clear. You've said to them overwhelmingly, you don't like their plan, but they're going to go ahead with it anyway. And that's just a canary in the mine shaft. All the rest of us are in that mine shaft too. So here's more of what they had to say. What again are these areas besides this one area that sounds like, okay, maybe it might be nicer if that looks better. Private enterprise will never handle that, Mike. Don't rely on that. Here's what the city has to say, this consultant.
The next kind of sub area is your downtown area. So again, the 6th and 7th corridor, and then going out along the commercial area of your city, both east and west.
Now, wait a minute. This is a blighted area? 6th and 7th, and this main crossroads, that's all blight? It is? It's just
I guess it depends on who you talk to.
Just not good enough, bud. Just not going to do it. Why, we've really got to start right in downtown. See the big X? There should be 2 X's. And you guys will know what I'm talking about. It should be a double cross in this whole thing. This is just, it's unsustainable. It's not the way that things should be. Why, it's an area just is filled full of blight when you think about it. All those businesses and everything that are down there, this will never do. Okay.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the problem is if you're going to borrow $100 million and
up to that amount, yeah.
And you're going to do this thing in this area, ultimately, that has to be a bond in some way that the people pay back as a part of their property taxes. So I don't know what's the difference between. Well, actually, the only difference between the sales tax and this is that the property owner pays. The other one is one that directly affects people's desire to buy by making prices higher. And this one here only makes the price higher for the vendor, who will then feel like he has to raise his prices in order to get by in this area, because $100 million plus interest doesn't come out of thin air. I mean, if you're borrowing $100 million or up to $100 million, you're going to pay $300 million back, after you're done paying interest and everything. So.
All right, here's more of what she has to say about our blighted city. It's blight.
Where your downtown commercial area is. And then it goes to the east and takes in some of that industrial area as you're heading out M Street. So this shows down to the south Y and the area that would go out to the west and includes where the fairgrounds is.
This is a big project.
And this is also area that is zone general commercial, mostly. And this is the area that includes the Spalding Industrial Park area and the remainder of the properties that are just south of M Street that are zoned both some commercial and some industrial. So it takes in a large portion of the properties in your city that are the general commercial industrial zone properties, seeing that those are the areas where you can create jobs for your community, areas where you can boost opportunities for maybe mixed use development, areas where you can improve the city around the downtown core. In urban renewal, the governing factor of how much money you can spend in urban renewal area is determined by your maximum indebtedness. Maximum indebtedness is the amount of money that you can spend over the life of an urban renewal area on your projects, programs, and administration. It does not include interest on debt. So if you place a bond or you take out a loan and you pay interest on that money, that's not included in that maximum indebtedness. And that's by statute. That's how the statute defines maximum indebtedness. A duration of an urban renewal plan is not a requirement. It's something that we use when we're looking at financial feasibility, because you have to say that an urban renewal area is financially feasible. And to be able to do that, you have to say about how long you think it will last. We looked at a couple of different scenarios for this area that we'll go through in a minute.
So let's all talk about maximum indebtedness, and let's make sure that we make a non-revocable engraved in granite decision before the election.
Yeah, and it. By the way, don't worry about the interest that you're paying on this debt.
No.
Don't consider that as part of. Listen, this is an economic development company coming in, telling you what you need to do to lure in business, and to me, this is bass backwards here. You have a situation where, well, you gotta spend money to make money. You gotta spend $100 million on your urban renewal, or these businesses are just not going to come here. They're not going to come here because the economy sucks. That's why they're not coming.
We're going to get to that. Oh, they've got predictions. Wait till you hear the predictions.
Oh, good Lord, predictions. That's what we. Listen. I thought we were in a dire financial situation here. And how is it that we're in a dire financial situation and we're going to borrow up to $100 million to refurbish all these areas that they say are blighted? Now, what would you say if the county was going to do that?
The county is part of this project. The county, this economic plan is a joint city council meeting. They're going to have a meeting on Friday.
Okay, does that mean that the county is a 50% party to this indebtedness?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think Grants Pass City is taking this on, but it is a joint city county project. Remember how they said they wanted to work together on this? Well, they're working together on it. This is one of the reasons why this has to be done before the election.
I'm telling you, these are people that, probably have not spent a whole lot of time in the private sector. They've never developed any of this stuff themselves. And now they're making plans on how to develop a city and how that's going to have a big payback,
Okay, all right, let's just do a little mental math. Ooh, my favorite thing. So let's suppose that you're expecting one of the plans here is for 3% jump in assessed values every year, 3%, and another one's for 3.5%. Oh, that's not very much, as this lady puts it. That's not very much. That's a very small difference between 3 and 3.5. So that means that every 2 years, it's going to jump up by 7%. Every 2 years, it jumps up by 7. That means that by the end of 10 years, we will have 7 and 7 and 7 and 7, 49%, about 50% growth in assessed values of properties. Well, is that possible? Well, I'll tell you that the assessed values over the last 5 years, I know they've gone up by less than 2%. But,
Mm-hmm.
2%, 3.5%, what's the difference?
Well, that'd be 1.5%, but
almost twice as much. Almost
but
twice as much.
But the bottom line is, in 10 years,
Yeah.
that's 30% more
That's
that you're
50.
paying as an assessment on on any given property. In the life of a mortgage, it's 100% increase in the assessment, and you know darn well that if all of a sudden the property values skyrocketed in some big boom, they would make an exception to that 3% per year and bump it up to try and get it somewhere closer to what the actual value was.
These are the two plans in front of the city council now, and they'll make the decision. They're not going to ask you. Their decision will be either 3% or 3.5%, and their decision that we're going to grow, you see, of course, because it's not going to be less than 2%. Come on, let's be realistic. And it's going to last like that for over a generation. There's not going to be any recession in the future. Come on. Obviously, Mr. Matthews, you do not understand economic development. There's not going to be any more recessions, certainly not going to be a depression. It's going to last this way for 25 to 30 years.
Yeah. Right after I got here, there was a bunch of people on our street, and when I bought my house, it was right in the middle of the values were going crazy. And the next year it went up like $100,000 on the house, and this gal down the street was thinking, well, in 10 years, these houses are all going to be worth about $1.5 million.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, we're already at a point where, they're fajiggering the numbers around to make people qualify for loans. So there's no way that in 10 years that they're going to be making $1 million loans to people who, are making $30,000 a year. That's not going to happen. So sometimes you just have to put your common sense hat on and do a little bit of common sense math, and you understand that sometimes these things that, the real estate roller coaster is one of these things. It has been
Absolutely.
all my life.
Well, these guys, you might think that they're clowns, and you might be right in some cases, but these are demonic clowns is one way to put it. I mean, my God, what has Simon Hare said about this kind of stuff in the past? What he said is that he said that he had personally talked with the guys that establish what our loan limits are, and he explained to them explicitly how that big Manor development project, the Manor development guys were his biggest investors in him getting reelected, and how that was the crown and the jewel in the crown of Josephine County government looking forward into the future. Now, the fact that crashed and burned, they still gave us a higher credit rating. Why do we want a higher credit rating? So we can borrow money.
Yeah, that's very dangerous, because at some point they may be tempted to borrow what the PERS shortfall is,
what would two fiscal conservatives do if they got elected? I'm not saying that they would throw a wet blanket over all financial development, but what would two fiscal conservatives do? They would not commit us to 25 to 30 years of debt by guessing that we're going to double.
Yeah, you know what? I would not be. I would not be a flamboyant spender. It didn't matter if you're a city or a county a person right now. But you know what? As we often say about how these people live in a different world than we do, they also live in a different world in terms of financial security, because there's no threat to their income. Their job is going to be there. They're going to continue to make more money. Their pensions are going to go up. All of this stuff is happening for these people. It isn't happening for the working public at large around here.
And they have literally cut themselves off. They've cut themselves off from public feedback because they don't like what you have to say. And even when you come there in great numbers, I didn't hear anything. You didn't hear anything. There's no consensus of opinion. There's no consensus.
Well, so why, even if you like what this gal's talking about, why would you give $100 million to a bunch of people that have complete contempt for you? I mean, we've demonstrated that on this program by showing their video of them in action, talking about the citizens and these guys with their hands out. Why would you give them $100 million? I can't imagine why you'd want to do that. I mean, that's like
they're convinced that there's nothing you can do about it, because they are not going to be asking you anymore, because you're not getting with the program. Obviously, you don't understand economic development, you citizens. And because you don't like their ideas, they're just not going to listen to you. As not Darren Feller, as the city council president, Dan DeYoung, said, he said, well, yeah, it was a big mistake to put the sales tax on the ballot. He said, but I might do it again.
Urban renewal areas typically start very slowly, and then after maybe 10 or 15 years, start getting in enough money to do real projects.
Now, okay, that's a very interesting thing to say. So what that means is once they commit to this, and make no mistake, they're going to commit to this. They're going to commit you and your children and your grandchildren to this. Once they do, we're not going to know if we're on the right track for 10 to 15 years.
Well, what portion of this $100 million is a fee that goes to these people for their for their brilliance?
Boy, are you asking the wrong question? They're not going to tell us that. Yeah, buddy. Now it's up to $100 million. Let's. Here she goes.
You have an opportunity. You have about $42 million of assessed value that you could capture if you put in an urban renewal area under this tax year, so before October 1st, which gives you the ability to really jumpstart your urban renewal area. It gives you
do it right away
at the beginning of your urban renewal area that is substantial. So the two scenarios that we did, one is the 3% plus that exception value, the new construction, and then the 3.5% plus that exception value. So if you looked at a 25-year time frame and the 3% plus exception value, that's that first column, the amount of money that you would have for your maximum indebtedness is about $57 million. That translates into about $38.4 million of projects. And the reason that's so much lower is when you look at projects, they inflate in cost over time. So a project in today's dollars is going to cost more in 10 years or 15 years. And so there's a difference in the amount of project dollars that you can allocate under that maximum indebtedness amount. If you look at that same scenario, the 3% scenario for a 30-year time period, your maximum indebtedness could be $86 million, and the amount for projects could be about $52.4 million.
Now, look at the numbers on the bottom. At 3.5%, that first column says $65 million. And the next column says 43. And then what does it say?
105.
$105 million. Is that the project they're going to pick? I don't know.
Yeah.
But what was it that Roy Lindsay said recently? Well, I don't like anything being cut out. I don't want to cut out anything. I have never been in a place where Republicans were tax and spend Republicans. I heard about it. I've just never really seen them in the wild.
Yeah, I just wish that we would stop doing stuff like this.
You and me both, buddy.
I mean, if they can, I want to know, in terms of the amount of money being paid by the citizens of the county and the citizens of the city. Is the city paying for their portion of the generated crime in this county? Are they? And if they're not, then they got no business considering this, because they're shorting the sheriff's department the amount of money to make sure that they're paying for 85% of the crime.
Okay, all right. So I got a question for you, Mike. What was the number 3 thing that was on the number 3 that was on their wish list of things that need to be done?
Yeah, that was funding for public safety. But
what was their number 2? What was their number 2 thing? More important than public safety?
I'm not sure if this was 2 or 1, but the Allen Creek Sports Complex funding.
That's right. The Allen Creek Sports Complex was more important than public safety, emergency, carrying AK-47s, people bleeding in the streets. More important. Allen Creek Sports Park.
Yeah. I mean, you see how screwy this is?
Yeah, buddy.
In the real world, of course, an emergency is an emergency is an emergency, and we all know what that is. But in this world, an emergency takes on a completely different form.
The only emergency now is why this thing over my shoulder is in red. It's the pre-election rush to increase debt. You thought that $50 million, that's today, it's going to be more later, to replace this water plant, it shouldn't need to be replaced. I mean, it's filters. They're going to rebuild a whole plant because of filters. You thought that was big? This could potentially be twice as big.
Yeah.
These are the people that are running the show. And the worst part about it is they don't want to listen to you anymore. This is what we keep saying to you. This is no longer an election about, well, who's got the goofiest ideas? Who's going to do the least amount of damage? No, this whole election now, this one coming up in May and then the next one coming in November, is all about the future of your grandchildren or your great-great-grandchildren. They're going to be indebted up to their eyeballs based on questionable numbers. Questionable numbers? We've been talking to you about questionable numbers from the beginning on everything. I'm very worried, sir. Very worried.
The reason that goes up so dramatically is the end of an urban renewal period is always when you get the most amount of tax increment, because it's the time frame over which that assessed value has grown within the urban renewal area over the time, the length of that urban renewal area. We also then looked at it's only a minutely larger amount of potential assessed value growth within the area at 3.5%. That does mean that you could get higher amounts of maximum indebtedness if you use that scenario. When we develop an urban renewal plan, we have to pick one scenario to say you have financial feasibility, and we usually work with the city's finance director and city manager and say, what scenario do you want us to use in making our assumptions?
Oh, that's lovely. So who are those two people? Anybody remember? The city manager is Aaron Kubik. Mm-hmm. The finance director is, by coincidence, also the head of SOS.
Yeah.
Jay Meredith.
You know what? I'd be very interested in knowing, you know, how many of these has this company done, and what sort of result has come behind, you know, their fantastic brilliance that they're, you know, that she's obviously very, very confident. You can see that by the way she's talking about it, like what she's saying is actually means something very important. I don't know.
I will slightly disagree, and it doesn't matter about how many degrees your doctor has when the inmates are running the asylum.
I'm wondering what it was that you disagreed with right there.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, it's not necessarily her, because she said a couple things like, well, you don't count on getting as much money, you know, as you might think you're going to get because the cost of the things is going to go up. That's smart. Okay. It's the idea that the people that are making the decision are insane.
Yeah. But listen, we don't know, and the thing is that the people that she is giving this presentation are not qualified to be making this sort of decision about what this lady is telling them.
That's right.
They're just going, well, that sounds, wow, shit, that's an impressive presentation. That lady, boy, she said a lot of important sounding things. We don't know anything about this. And I think a little bit of research ought to be done into, okay, what are they charging us for all of this? What is the record of some sort of success? She's talking about it like they've been doing it for 100 years. And, what we usually do is, I don't know that economic development companies, from what I've observed of them, are in any place to be telling people what they ought to be doing for economic development, strangely enough. They have recommendations like, you're going to get 100 jobs by putting a plaque on a rock. I mean,
yes.
that's the type of, and we're talking about the same type of people here. So yes. I'm just, I'm dubious of all of this stuff. I just don't think in this situation here where they're lecturing us on our financial, precariousness, and yet they're talking about jumping into up to $100 million worth of debt. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And, maybe if you do think that makes a whole lot of sense and you're going to explain to me how, then write us an email here. But the thing is that I know I'm paying for a piece of that because I own property in Grants Pass, which I have to pay property taxes on. And my property taxes obviously will go up a fair amount to finance $100 million bond. And so I have a stake in that, although I don't get to vote on it. I don't know that they're going to allow voting on this, but I don't get to vote on such a thing, even if it is on the ballot, because I don't live in the city. But this does affect me, and I already do not get enough lease rent for my building as it is right now, because this particular rental market has been in a slump for about 10 years. Okay. So I don't want to spend more money. What I want is for the economy to return. And this thing is not going to make the economy return. The economy was kicking butt when I arrived here back in 2003, and it had nothing to do with urban renewal projects. It had to do with the fact that, people were buying and selling homes, and, so that market was hopping. If you cut down trees and make lumber out of them and sell that lumber to people, and then because the people in your community are doing that work and have money in their pockets, that makes the economy go. This thing here sucks money out of the economy in hopes that a bunch of people will be lured here to do business. But if the economy is not going places, it won't matter how nice your streetlights look. It won't matter, what you've done in the town. It'll be a great town to live in, and maybe that'll draw more retirement people here because it's a cute town. But it's not going to make business happen anymore outside of services. And I thought we were trying to pull in, more industry and that type of thing here. I just don't think this is a good idea. I'm a no voter on that.
Okay, so what are some of the projects that they have in mind? We're going to let her speak for about a minute or so here, and I'm thinking that on this clip, she's going to explain to you what some of the top projects are that her consulting firm thinks, well, this is really going to lead to economic prosperity and maybe double some of the amounts that are coming. Here we go. Tell us all about it. Please explain to us economic development.
The biggest difference that you should understand on the 25 to 30-year time frame is not only that you get a lot more money, but it is impacting those taxing jurisdictions another 5 years. And so you want to decide how long you think it's okay to take those urban renewal dollars, because it does take away from your city budget and the county budget and the 4-H budget. So important considerations. We talked a lot about potential projects, and our project list is more aggressive than you probably can do given the amount of money, but we threw all those projects in. We went back and forth in terms of trying to decide whether to take some projects out or how to prioritize them. And we ended up deciding that we would put all the projects in so that you as the city council could see the types of things that both the task force and staff thought were important projects to be done, knowing that if you decide to, excuse me, move ahead with urban renewal, that you'll have to condense that project list.
Okay, so as we've said before, these are things that Roy Lindsay, for example, does not want to cut out anything. Let's go down through the list here and the priority that they put it in. A downtown plaza, a parking structure, multi-tier, streetscape lighting and tree lighting and signage, we know about the signage, and alleyways.
Mm-hmm.
And also we're going to need to have redevelopment, mixed use, and building improvements. We're not going to make any progress if we don't have things that range from tree lighting to a parking structure, Mike Jones.
Okay. Listen, I don't know that whether or not these would be great enhancements or not. Maybe they would be. I don't think that's the point.
But this isn't just a wish list. Here's the important thing, the most important thing. It's wonderful to have a wish list. Why? I would like a wish list too. But they want to put this thing into operation, to commit us to this before the November election.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not goofing around. This is not putting together some kind of fantasy wish list. This is committing the city. And you heard it's going to have an effect on 4-H district. Well, okay. On the county, it's going to have an effect on everybody. For how long? 25 to 30 years.
I mean, I think the point really is, though, are these going to be good things? And is it prudent to do that right now? I can't get out of the mindset that we're in some sort of a financial, it may not be a financial emergency, but we're certainly not kicking rear ends and taking names here right now. Economically.
Why is it important to do it immediately?
Well, listen, because when you're giving a sales pitch to somebody and you're watching an infomercial, it's really, you need to do this right now, because only for right now,
operators
it's
standing by.
Right. It's $19.99 down from $39.99. So you have to do this right now. Otherwise, you're going to pay a premium later. We don't know that that's true at all.
Add on shipping and handling, that's all, which could equal the price of the goods, but that's all that you need to do. These guys, these characters need to do it right now because their reputation is on a high? No, because their reputation is about as low as it can possibly get, and they need to push this thing through while they're still in office.
Right. And they're going to sell them. And a lot of these guys are probably going to think, well, you know what, I can say, down the road that, that idea. Yeah. I played a part in that, and that's the only thing that the city councilor or a mayor can really glom onto and say, yeah, I did that. I was responsible for that. That was, and that thing that we did, it set the city back on the path to prosperity.
They're not going to be here at the end of that time to explain to anybody, including your great-grandchildren.
Right. That's why it's safe to do.
Right. They're not even going to be in office much longer. Okay. Yeah. So was there any feedback?
Dead, probably.
Was there any feedback? Because one would hope when you see something happen at a county commissioners meeting that it's not just me that gets up, or a couple of us, Mike and I, that it's other people, or maybe people who are actually sitting up there that could say, hey, wait a minute, how come no one is sending letters off to our legislators in Washington, D.C. saying you owe us money? Why is nobody doing any of this? And they could say, I got a question about that. Well, there were a couple of little tiny questions. And then here was what Dan DeYoung said, which was the most interesting thing.
Okay, Dan?
How solid is the 25 years and 30 years? In other words, if we say it's 25 years, when 25 years comes to pass and we haven't finished all the projects we have in our list, I think I've seen it go on for years.
It can.
It just keeps on going on. Well, the other stakeholders in the room, which is the county and the school and so on and so on, do they have any say on, hey, knock it off? It was 25 years and we need that money? Because around here,
Right.
there are a couple other people in the room that need the money.
I understand that.
While we decide we're going to fire this up,
Right.
they have no skin in the game, so on and so
Right.
forth.
So
So
there's a
how
couple-
solid is that? And what do you have to do on the 25 years? If you say no, if the council at that time says, no, we're staying with 25 years so we can start making those the payments can go back to the other entities. And who says, no, we've still got other things to do here.
So I've worked with other cities that have had the same concern. I finished just in the last 6 months a project with the city of Newport, and they
Steve Rich.
put in their urban renewal plan a specific termination date. So it's not required by statute, but they felt that if they hadn't accomplished their urban renewal plan by that date, that was their problem. They would do less projects and they would be done. So you are able to put in your urban renewal plan a specific date if you want to. When you do that, you want to make it very hard to change that date, because I've also had agencies come to me and say, okay, well, we have this termination date, but we just want to get rid of it. So can we do this minor amendment to the plan and get rid of this date? So I recommend to city councils that if they want to put a duration date, and that's really important to them, that they put it in the plan under the substantial amendment provision of the plan, which makes it a big deal to change it. So you have to go through a big public process and get input. So you can put that date in your plan and say, okay, this is it.
Yeah, because this, 25 years from now, I certainly am not going to be here. And so we'd want to know that, down the road, 25 years from now, they don't start forming their own opinion and, gee, let's just keep building stuff and nobody else gets the money and so on and so forth. And who all is at the table when this goes down? Are the other stakeholders, are they in on this also?
The voting
Yes.
for the adoption of the plan, the original
Or is it
adoption?
just the city council?
Just the city council. So you get to make that decision. You inform the other taxing districts, but the statute doesn't require that they also approve it.
Nice.
I had to end with that. That's incredible.
Oh, joy. Well,
No, they don't have to approve this, Mike. Let's leave it up to the people with the lowest possible reputation. Well, a little bit higher than the county commissioners, but not much. Let's give it to the people who are, except for a certain percentage, it's always there, the most hated people in this entire part of the country, of the state. Let's give it to them to commit us for 25 to 30 years. Well before the election. Well before the election, everybody. What can you do? What can you do? Mike, what do you think we could do?
Well, the only thing that you can do, and correct me if I'm wrong, is show up at city council meetings and say, hey, that thing you were talking about the other day? Hell no. And line up out the door, for public comment there. That's really
What
about
happened the last time that happened? Multiple meetings.
Yeah, they didn't go along with it. But listen,
They didn't
unfortunately,
even hear us.
yeah, but it being your only option, you don't really have any other choice. You have to hope that these people would remember that they're public servants and, not encumber you and your children and your grandchildren, so that they can have some happy little thing and something to, put in their little legacy book there or something.
We could go we have a meeting coming up on the 6th, the weekly business session. You could go to the county commissioners and say, would you please represent us, and go to this meeting that's going to happen 2 days later and say, we don't like this idea. Oh, and they're going to respond immediately to the population because they're so popular.
Yeah.
Well, okay. At least you know. Where's the story been? You're certainly not going to see it on KJO. Forget about that. Why do I even mention them? Not going to see it on TV stations. We've got a TV station. It's an internet TV station because we can afford that. You're not going to see it in the Courier. Well, maybe a couple of weeks from now after they've already voted on it. But this is the only place. That's pathetic. I'm sorry. I'm not saying it's pathetic because it's our show, but I mean, really, this is it. I mean, you just saw it. We're not making this up. This is what they're saying. This is their logic, so to speak, for this thing. Their plan is 25 to 30 years of indebtedness.